So there are many things that I try to do as a father, but there are just a few things that have had more impact than the mantra that I taught my son when he was 3 years old, and that I am now teaching my daughter who is 4 years old. And I saw the impact really clearly not too long ago when my daughter, again, who is just 4, she faced a fear swimming underwater. And then finding out that she repeated something that gave her the strength to keep going and to push through. So, in this episode, what I want to do is I want to give you a bit of that story, of that moment, and then also share with you how I came about creating our family mantra, which was inspired by a conversation that I listened to between Steph Curry and Nipsey Hussle. And then I also want to share with you how you can actually go ahead and create a mantra for your own family based on your values. So based on, what you find important for your kids to hold on to. So what I want to do, right, to make sure this episode is to the point and valuable and make sure you get the most out of it is I'll break it up in about three parts, three big parts. So first I'll touch on why a mantra even matters in the first place, then how I went about creating ours, and then how you can go ahead and quickly create your own. But before I get into all of this, I want to say if you're a returning listener, welcome back. And I just want you to know that I appreciate you. I appreciate your presence, your support, the time that you give. And in the event that you are new here, my name is Andy, and I'm the host of this podcast, the Body of Work podcast. I'm a dadpreneur, working on building something meaningful, staying fit and healthy, showing up in the best way that I can for my family so I can become the best version of myself, right? Not only for them, but also for me. And this podcast is my way of documenting that journey, that messy middle that I like to call it, which is the raw, unfiltered middle that doesn't always get talked about, but where I feel like the real magic happens. All right, so let's get into it. Why does a mantra even matter in the first place? As fathers, we all want to give our kids the best possible chance to win in life, right? To just be successful in life. Not to just succeed though, but to lead a life that feels joyful, that feels grounded, and to just live a life that feels feel like it's full of purpose. And at least that's how I look at it when I think about how what I want to give my kids. And if I'm being real, like really transparent, when I have the thought of when I'm not there anymore, like there, I want to know that I want to know that I did everything to ensure my kids feel confident in life, right? That they feel confident knowing that they can take care of themselves and make it through whatever and, keep their chin up no matter what. I don't want my kids to just be good. I want them to do better than me. And part of that comes by also leading by example. And now that I'm 37, I've started to just see how noisy life can get. There's distractions everywhere, pressure from all sides. And then there's this constant battle with identity, right? Figuring out who you really are in the middle of all of this. And your identity is especially tested when life's challenges, setbacks, life's curveballs start knocking at your door. And then there's social media that just throws more into the mix, right? And don't get me wrong, the internet and social media definitely has its blessings and its upsides, right? But it also comes with its downsides and its curses too. The constant comparing, constantly distracted, constantly, being pulled away from your core, sometimes without you even knowing. And the truth is that the older you get, the more you start learning what really matters and what kind of man you want to become. And at the same time, the kind of man that you don't want to become. It's like you start asking yourself questions like, what do I want to pass on? What do I want my kids to remember? And the reality of it all is that they won't remember everything. They won't remember all the advice you gave them, all the stories you were telling them, all the moments you tried to teach them something important. But you know what they will remember? They'll remember what gets repeated. They'll remember what got repeated over and over. And that's why I believe in mantras. Because mantras are like these little value packed scripts that you give your kids, these little lines that help shape their internal voice. And because they're repeating it over and over, these lines, these scripts, they stick. And by having mantras, you're basically intentionally and manually impacting the mental programming of your kids. You're basically helping to build their inner wiring. I'll be honest with you. I didn't come up with, mantras, come up with this on my own. So, this idea of having a mantra. I actually got the idea, from a conversation, like I mentioned, that I came across between Nipsey Hussle and Steph Curry. Two men I really respect, not just for what they've done in their careers, but for how they showed up as fathers. And in the conversation that they had, Nipsey was talking about how he drills these value-based scripts into his kids, even though, they were young at the time, even though they may not fully understand what the words were meaning right now. He said something along the lines of, you see, they may not get it today, but one day they will. And when they do, it'll be words that guides them. And when I heard that really hit me hard. So then this is how I basically think about it, right? A mantra is like the training wheels for character, for building character. Until your kids can ride on their own, a mantra is you guiding them with your voice. Even when you're not there. Like that's the important part. Like you're guiding them with your voice when you're not there. And that voice, your voice, it becomes part of them. It becomes the inner dialogue they hear when life gets hard. Now, I want you to just take a second and think. Like, can you remember something your parents or someone close to you used to say, something that still plays in your head today? And maybe it was something positive, maybe it wasn't, but for some reason it stuck. And that's the power of repetition. So when I think about my role as a father, I think I don't want to leave that inner voice up to chance. I want to be intentional about what I repeat. And that's why mantras matter, because they don't just guide your kids now, they shape how they talk to themselves for the rest of their lives. So here's how I actually came up with our family mantra, the one that I've been instilling in my kids for years now. Like I mentioned earlier, I stumbled across, this conversation between Nipsey Hussle and Steph Curry. And that was a conversation that completely shifted something in me. Now, if you don't know Nipsey Hussle, quickly, like he was a prolific rapper who came up in tough circumstances, but he never let that define who he was or, where he was headed. And then you got Steph Curry, who is still in the NBA and one of the greatest basketball players to ever play the game of basketball at such an elite level. So I just remember the two of them walking. I think I was on YouTube. And then I remember coming across this video where the two of them were just, walking and they were just chopping it up, like just talking. And they ended up walking into what I believe was like a black SUV, van, bus, or whatever it was. And again, they were just vibing, chilling, talking. And then out of nowhere, the topic of fatherhood comes up. And what really got to me wasn't just the fact that they talked about it, but it was how transparent and how honest they were in talking about it. Because here you have these two men who've achieved greatness and they're having this heart to heart conversation, just opening up about the kind of fathers and the kind of partners they want to be, right? The kind of example they want to set for their families. Like that hit deep, and that for me is right there. That's what greatness looks like. And then Nipsey Hussle, like he started talking about how he was raising his kids, the scripts that he was giving them. He said something that I'll never forget. He said, again, like even if they don't fully understand it now, the scripts that I'm giving them, they're going to carry that with them later on in life. And at a given point, later on, it will click. And when it does click, it'll guide them. And then he started sharing a bit of how he would go about drilling them with these scripts. He said he would ask them, okay, are you a follower or are you a leader? And then they'd respond with, I'm a leader. And then he asked them, so what's a leader? And then they'd respond, someone who thinks for themselves. And then he mentioned a value he instills, which is integrity. And that integrity is doing the right thing, even when nobody is watching. And as soon as I heard that, I thought, this is what I want to do. Now, keep in mind, at the time that I'm listening to this, my son, because I only had one kid at the time, my son is only 3 years old, but I thought that even if my son didn't fully understand it yet, I wanted to build that foundation in him. I wanted to give him something solid, something that would anchor him for life. So after that conversation, I sat down and I started thinking, okay, so what do I truly value? What do I want to pass on? What do I want my children to hold on to, that no matter what the world throws at them, that would be something that they can hold on to. And for me, the values that resonated at a core level were, strength, kindness, confidence, leadership, and self-worth. And out of that is how I created, our mantra. And I started teaching it to my son when he was just 3 years old. And I remember walking him to school. He'd be sitting on my shoulders and I'd have him repeat it with me. And, we would go like, I am, and then I'll, flex my arms, and then he would say, I am strong. And then I am smart, I'll touch the side of my head so then he knows, smart. And then I am kind. And then, we'd rub our hands over our heart. And then I am, and then, he'd say his name, for example, let's say in this case, I am Andy and I can do anything. And then I'd ask him, so what do we value? And the answer would be, I value integrity, confidence, and leadership. And then similar to what Nipsey did, I'd ask him, so what's integrity? And then so we say integrity is doing the right thing even when nobody is watching. What's confidence? Confidence is believing in yourself. What's leadership? Leadership is leading by example and thinking for yourself. And to close it out, I'll have him repeat something 3 times. And this is the self-worth part. And he'd say, I love myself and I am enough, right? And then he repeat that 3 times. And we've been doing this for years now. And now here's the thing. My son speaks Dutch, right? As his first language. English is his second. So it took time for this to really sink in, and it's going to take longer for it to sink in because it's another language as well. But it's happening and I see it, and, he knows it now. And now I've started doing the same thing with my daughter who is 4, because these values aren't just for sons. Isn't just for my son. They're just as important and powerful for my daughter as well, for daughters in general. And so I'm watching it take root in her too. So what I want to say is this. It's that it's never too late to start doing this. Even if your kids are maybe in their teens, even if you've never done anything like this before, even if you want to start today, like, you can. And yes, my mantra was inspired by Nipsey Hussle, or that conversation. And some lines I borrowed like directly, but I also made it my own. And that's what I want for you too. If you hear something that moves you, right? Like, use it. If there's something you want your kids to carry, build on that. Your mantra doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real, and it has to reflect the values you want to pass on, because that voice, that script, that repetition, like, that's the inner voice your child will carry with them, when you're not there. And that's why I started ours, and why I believe every father should have one. All right, so I want to share a moment with you, right? A moment where I knew that having a mantra like this, it actually paid off. And it was a moment again with my daughter. She's 4 now, turning 5 very soon. And just before the summer break this year, 2025, she passed for her diploma A swimming exam. And now she's working on going for her B diploma. And there's this one exercise, this one part for her B diploma exam where she has to swim underwater. I don't know the exact distance, but I think it's somewhere between 5 and 10 meters. And so part of the challenge is that she has to swim underwater through a hole that the instructor will be holding before she has to come up on the other side. And for a couple of weeks, she kept coming up halfway. She'd start good, she'd dive, but then something would stop her. I don't know if it was fear, hesitation, or just discomfort, but she wasn't making it all the way through. And then one day, boom, she did it. She swam the full distance underwater, made it through the hole, and came up on the other side. And she looked through the glass, looked at me, big smile on her face, and I gave her 2 big thumbs up. And man, like, I could see it on her face. She was happy, she felt proud of herself. And when she came out of the pool, I hugged her, told her how proud I was of her, which is something I always remind her, no matter what the outcome is, what happens in there, whether you go through the hole or not, I'm proud of you. So I dried her off. I got her dressed, and we started walking to the car. And now I'm walking ahead of her, and suddenly she calls us. She says, "Papa." And then so I turn around, and then she then says, when I was underwater, I actually wanted to give up, but then I told myself, I believe in myself. And and listen, right? She said this in English. My kids are Dutch again. So for her to say that in English, our mantra language, it hit even harder. And I'm telling you, like, I melted. I felt something shift in my chest, like this swelling in my heart. It's kind of hard to put into words, but that's when I knew she wasn't just repeating the mantra, she was owning it. She's hearing the voice in her head. And that line, in our mantra, which is confidence is believing in yourself, like she was living it. And then she applied it when it mattered most. And in that moment, I thought, like, this stuff is working. Like, this is what fatherhood is about. I mean, I already know I'm doing the work, right? I know I'm showing up. I'm being a good dad. I'm being a really good dad. But in that moment, I honestly thought, man, like, I'm an awesome father. Because it's one thing to say, we want to raise confident kids, resilient kids, but it's another thing to see your child believe in herself in real time. And that's when I knew I'm passing on something that will stick with her, that will stick with both of them, right? So if you're listening, right, and you're still vibing with this, you're vibing with me, and you're a dad wanting to keep showing up in the best way possible for your kid, then I also want you to have moments like this one that I had with my daughter, right? I want you to experience those small but powerful confirmations that you are indeed planting the right seeds that will grow into in your kids. So here's what I want you to do, right? I want to help you create your own family mantra. Even if you're just entertaining the idea right now, this can be the start of something powerful for you and for your family. So I'll break up, how I went about creating my mantra in about 4 steps, right? The 4 steps are, like you choose, you refine, wrap, and practice. And then I'll actually give a bonus step that, just makes this all the more impactful. Okay, so step one, choose. So step one is to choose 3 to 5 core values. So, you take a piece of paper, you open your notes app or sit behind your laptop. It doesn't matter, what you choose. Just sit down and write down 3 to 5 values that truly matter to you. Values that as a man, as a father, you want to live by. And you can even go as far as ask yourself, right? What do I want my kids to remember me for? Like, what do I want them to take away and carry into their own lives? Or what do I believe builds a strong, kind, grounded human being? Again, for example, my values are, strength, confidence, leadership, kindness, self-worth. And if you're having a hard time thinking about yours, just look to your role models, whether they be athletes, I don't know, artists, mentors, living or, passed on online or in person. Think about the values that they stand for and check in with yourself and see what resonates with you. All right, so step one is choose. Step two is to define. So after you choose your core values, you want to define each value in a kid-friendly language. So you're going to take each value and give it a simple, easy to understand definition. You don't want to overcomplicate it. Your goal here is to basically make it stick or make it easier to stick. Something that they can remember and that they can repeat. And as they grow, it will, click. So for example, let's take leadership, right? From in my family's mantra. I define it as leadership is leading by example and thinking for yourself. Like that's it. It's simple, it's clear, and it's easy to remember. All right, now step three. Step three is you want to kind of wrap it up in a rhythm or a call and response format. And this is where it kind of gets fun, or at least where you can make it something fun and even more unique, because now you can use like rhythm, right? You can use repetition. You can use physical movements, a call and response format to spice things up, because when there's a flow in it, the mantra sticks even better. For example, right? Like I'll say to my kids, I am, and then I'll put up a strong arm. And so they remember, oh yeah, I am strong. Or I'll say, I am, and then I'll point to the side of my head. And so then they remember, oh yeah, I am smart, you know? So you want to do things like this. And by doing this, like I am incorporating different formats to engage them and to teach them. And it's a combination, because it's a combination of rhythm, it's a combination of a call and response, it's a combination of, using physical movements as well. So basically, you want to use whatever works for your family, right? But remember to just have fun with it too, right? Just give it a rhythm, make it interactive, but more importantly, is just make it yours. And now the last step, step 4, is you want to basically practice. You want to practice it regularly. And this one is it's key. Simply because repetition is what creates identity. So try to practice the mantra daily, maybe morning or evening or both. And if, for example, if you do it in the morning, maybe you just say it and you have them listen to you on the way to school, right? And then maybe at night before bed, you involve them in the practice. Either way, whatever you choose, at the end of the day, you're giving them something to anchor themselves, to, just before the day begins or just before the day ends. And again, it's this positive script, this positive inner script that they can carry with them into the world, right? To face whatever comes their way. Okay, so I did say I have a bonus step, and this is if you have a partner, right? You're raising your kids with your spouse. And so the bonus step is essentially to align with your partner in creating this mantra. So you want to combine this bonus step basically with the first step, which is to choose your core values. Because if you're raising a child with your partner, you're going to want to bring them into this. You both can write down 3 to 5 of your top values, and then you can compare. Like you look at both of your values and see, okay, so where is there an overlap? Like what matters most to both of you? Because trust me, when you can find alignment together, and then your child or your kids here, for example, like, we're teaching you this, we're giving you this because this is what mama and papa believe in. Like you're giving them this unified foundation, a deeper alignment that builds like an unshakable family identity. Before I close out quickly, I want to leave you with this. If you know, come up with your own family mantra, I'd love to hear it. If you're watching this on YouTube, like drop it in the comments. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, I'm not sure if you can leave comments, but if you're not able to, like come over to YouTube and share it in the comment section there. Because here's the thing. When you share yours, you're not just inspiring me, right? You're actually inspiring other fathers too. You're inspiring them to step into this practice as well, because we can learn from one another, we can learn from each other, we can build, from one another. And remember this, keep in mind that you may not remember every single thing your dad ever said to you, but you remember how he showed up. And that's what stuck, that's what sticks. And that's the thing that lasts. And the mantra lets you show up with your words, it lets you show up with your values. It's your way of giving your kids something to carry every single day. Because again, if my 4-year-old daughter can hold on to her belief underwater and push through something she once thought was, maybe impossible, just imagine what your kids might carry into the world if you help them build that belief from now. Because what you repeat becomes what they remember. And here's the key, right? Here's a big, big, big takeaway as well. Don't just give them the words. Don't just hand them a script, but be the living example, right? Be the embodiment of that script. That 1-2 combination of repeating it, so just saying it, and then them also seeing you live it, like that's what etches it deep into their minds and then into their hearts. And that's what's going to make it real. And that's what they'll carry with them for the rest of their lives.